Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Greetings.
Oh,
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
I'm finishing my last
Hello.
humor soon.
Very excited to welcome you to this Esri hosted webinar. It's being sponsored by the UMass GIS Community of Practice. So I recognize a lot of you from that group. It's just an informal group of people at UMass or affiliated with UMass who enjoy using GIS. So welcome very much. This is a workshop specifically about migrating to ArcGIS Pro. So we are recording this workshop. So you can see there's a recording in progress. Great, I'm gonna ask you to mute yourselves unless you have, if you need to speak up and ask a question, please feel free to do that. You can also use the raise hand function, or you can type into the chat, and I will be moderating. My name is Becky Seifried, by the way. I am the Geospatial Information Librarian at UMass Amherst, and I will be the moderator. And so after these introductions, I'll step away. If you have any technical difficulties, raise your hand or put something in the chat. So I guess at this point, unless we have any questions, I'll do a quick introduction and then turn it over. Oh, one more technical thing. You'll notice that we have live captioning on. If that is distracting for you, at the bottom of your Zoom window, there should be an option, maybe it's called live transcript, and you can hide the subtitles if that is something you don't want. Otherwise, it's there in case people find that helpful. All right, so now I'll do introductions. Canserina Kurnia is a senior solution engineer for the Esri Education outreach team. The main role of providing technical advice and assistance to universities in advancing their GIS technology. And you can read more about her on the registration page. And Dr. Joseph Kerski is an education manager and geographer at Esri, and he has lots of awards and recognitions, and we're honored to welcome him back. He was here earlier in the spring, and he taught a story maps workshop for us. So I'll turn it over to Joseph and Canserina.
Well, many thanks, Dr. Becky. Good to have you here, and thanks for inviting us. Folks, it's summertime and we're doing GIS. What's not to love? I can't think of any better way to spend some time here in June. So welcome, everyone. Joseph Kerski here on the education team. I got my colleague, Canserina Kurnia here. Canserina, do you want to say hey?
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Familiar faces, some of you. Thank you.
Yeah, we know some of you, and it's good to have you here. And Becky, I'm glad that we didn't burn our bridges last time with the Story Maps workshop, that people are back for more. And there is so much to explore here in a workshop like this. We truly, Canserina and I, we serve on this education team. So this is our team's landing page. I'm sure you check it daily. I'm just kidding. But it is there, and it's all about the support and the encouragement and the whatever we can do to help you be successful in education with geospatial technology and spatial thinking. So in GIS, GI science programs, geography, environmental studies, library science, and also in business, data science, health, in civil engineering. So we're really interested in helping people understand the deeper platform nature of geospatial technologies as it has evolved by 2021. And also the broader implementation. By broader, we mean, we just feel this is too valuable a perspective, a set of tools, a way of solving problems to be in one or two departments on campus. So if we can help you and your colleagues adopt in some ways, some pieces of this geospatial platform, that's what we are happy to do. It's all focused on instruction and on research and also on campus facilities. So if you've got some people in the facilities side of things that are thinking about campus safety issues, reopening campuses, mapping infrastructure, and so on, using it in the alumni program, in the admissions office, marketing your campus, et cetera. That's really what we want to do is to help you be successful with this in all facets of education. So that being said, one reminder here, our mission is really education, sustainability, and science. That's our mission, and we're sticking to it. And we've stuck to it for 52 years now here at Esri, and we're really glad to be a part of the education community. So thanks for being so open and willing to have us here. what we're going to focus on here in our migrating to ArcGIS workshop. We want to find out a little bit more about you. We did take thanks to Becky, we did take the poll and found out there's a fairly broad spectrum of use of ArcGIS Pro. And if you want to type in your, I know there's some people that didn't get included in that poll earlier. We've got some people that are joining us here, and we're glad to have you here as well. If you want to put it in the chat box, maybe one of your goals in the workshop, we've got a plan, of course, that we've been mulling over for weeks now, but we are happy to make some adjustments based on what you want. We really want to make this useful for you all, or all y'all, ustedes, vous, okay? So with that said, feel free to type in those points, what you want to get out of the workshop, and perhaps a little bit of your comfort level with Pro, your experience with Pro, bit, none, extensive, etc. So it's good to have you here. One of the things that we have heard from folks in the past is that, I'm sticking with ArcMap because in the workplace, industry, government, nonprofit, even some academia, I have heard that there are people that really want people with ArcMap experience because that's what they're using in those organizations, whether it's transportation or public safety or whatever. And I think that was valid for a while. But to be honest, what we're hearing, Canserina and I and our colleagues, is we want people that know Pro because we want our organization to adopt modern GIS technology. So having your students understand some of the workflows and tools and capabilities here in ArcGIS Pro, I think will serve them well in helping those organizations move along into the modern era, if you know what I mean. So oftentimes also, just to be completely open with you all, we are asked questions from the community, academia, and beyond about the adoption of Pro. Canserina, what was it, 2018? I think it was maybe early 2019, where there was a sort of a tipping point of half ArcGIS Desktop or ArcMap and half ArcGIS Pro. And ever since then, it's been more and more ArcGIS Pro being adopted by organizations for a variety of reasons that we'll chat about here in the workshop. And Canserina's got all kinds of wonderful information about, some of the new capabilities and that sort of thing. I think that's it's noble for an organization such as ours to try to accommodate an existing, in our case, millions of users using ArcMap, and indeed that's what many of us grew up on way back in the old days, up till the present, where we've actually used it for 20 years now. And so, I think it's notable to say, hey, that's great that we didn't just say, sorry, you can't use ArcMap anymore as of this date, you know what I mean? Because there were so many transportation systems and, city, municipal governments and so on that were fully dependent on it, and having lots of scripts and workflows and stuff. And so that was understandable that we didn't do that. And that was very a relief to the community. But on the other hand, I think the slight disadvantage there, the slight challenge is that people were reluctant to change. And, it's understandable. Because, hey, I still got both. I can run both on my computer. Why move? We'll talk about that. However, going forward, even though we've got the capability of, you've got updates, as you've seen, to ArcMap, to be honest, when I look over people's shoulders now, and Canserina will talk more about this, and they're using ArcMap, I haven't actually had it on my computer for a while. It looks really complicated to me. I'll peer over their shoulders and go, wow, there's a lot of tools there in ArcMap, and they're kind of all in your face at once, as you know. And so it looks actually really complicated compared to Pro. And that's just one reason. But with my instructor hat on, I also teach at the University of Denver and at the University of Minnesota. Just like you all, I love teaching and love getting students excited about this. And I'll close it off right here in terms of my own observations, but the students that are using Pro, it's much more like other software that they're using, the Office 365 suite and other things, where you've got these contextual menus and that are only active for the tool that you're using. And the graphics and everything else is so much cleaner and faster. And then this promise, this is the very last thing. It's actually faster and I can't say that I haven't loaded tons of satellite images and had it crash, but the amount of crashing is vastly less than I used to have with ArcMap, where occasionally I would run out of RAM on my computer, and stuff like that. So, and there's lots of other more important advantages than that. But thanks. I'm going to check the chat box here, see how you folks are doing. How are you folks doing? Everybody ready to roll with ArcGIS Pro and touching on migration advantages? And also we're going to have some hands-on work. So if you've got access through UMass or what, I know we've got a couple of other institutions represented, we invite you to, fire up ArcGIS Pro, and actually we're going to have some blocks where we kind of turn you loose for a short period of time and have you dig into some exercises that we've got planned for you all. And don't worry if you don't have access or you don't want to do it that way. We're going to completely summarize after those short hands-on blocks. Okay. Okay, Canserina, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Okay, let me just share my screen first here. Okay, can you see my screen? All right, thank you. Again, welcome everyone. Great to have you all here. I read also from the chat. Thank you for all the inputs. We tried to cover them all. And some of you new, we're gonna start with the new. Some of you even like Forrest and especially Seda, I think, is already start using Pro with the deep learning. It's going to the higher end. But I'm gonna start with the beginning. There is a few things that can help to work with Pro easily. The problem with Pro, I think, is many of us are so used to with ArcMap that you have a muscle memory. It's harder to move to Pro. But if you have a student that never touch ArcMap, they kick it up right away, okay? Because Pro is actually, if it's easier, more modern interface. So we're gonna be together for 2 hours. I'm gonna start first that some of the slides about why migrate to ArcGIS Pro, and then after that I'm gonna do the demo, and if you like, you can also follow along with that exercise. And Joseph also will give his exercise, which is a cool one about the zebra muscle. Then we're gonna give you time to explore a little bit more. Then after that, Joseph gonna give resources to update existing course materials. To be honest, this Pro has the biggest group at Esri that working in Pro, and also the biggest collection for the course materials to learn. Okay, so there's tons of them that available that you can learn about Pro. And then I need to touch a little bit about licensing and access, but mostly from the user endpoint. So you can easily switching between license if you like to. Then I'm gonna cover some of the key updates, including what's new in Pro 2.8. Some of you asking about that. And we close with the quick question and answer and sharing idea. So hopefully that sounds good to you. Okay, so we're gonna start with why we're migrating with Pro. Okay, so ArcMap we built ArcMap about more than 25 years ago. I mean, for a software, it is a very long time that exists. Okay? We try to develop it more, but it is built based on 32 bits environment, which is the best 25 years ago. But we cannot move it more than that. Okay? So instead of we continue the name, we create a new application with a new name, ArcGIS Pro. And we learn from what we have in ArcMap in order to create ArcGIS Pro. So it's become integrated with the platform, so it can serve you for the desktop and also the web GIS. It's combined to 2D and 3D experience in one application. So you don't have to run more than one application. There is ArcCatalog, there is ArcMap, there is ArcGlobe, but everything is in one ArcGIS Pro. It's 64-bit multi-threaded. The more powerful your computer, the more powerful your graphic card, it will be faster. It's a modern application, a ribbon-based simplify user interface. You can have multiple map, you can have multiple layout, you can have multiple notebooks. So everything in one application. Is comprehensive analysis tool, hundreds of spatial analysis tools that are available. Simplify the search and query, and we add more and more functionality. Okay. So it's become the primary workstation for doing GIS, authoring, doing the editing, data preparations, and analysis. But also it's become the authoring tool for your web map, for your 3D scene, and layer used by other applications like web application or mobile application. It's become the workstation for integrations with the 3D analysis, visualization. It's a workstation for doing your image analysis, spatial data science, deep learning, machine learning, and also the integration with the BIM and CAD. So everything is actually supported in Pro. So Pro today, Joseph talked about this a little bit already. Over 90% of ArcGIS Pro licenses have been activated globally. So people start using it, not only start using it already now. It's probably now it's more than 90% and having almost all equivalent functionality as ArcMap. But not only that, it's a lot more that ArcMap cannot do. Okay. If we build a new tool, if we build a new integration, it's only available now in Pro. Basically, ArcMap stable. You can still use it if you like to, but if you notice, we're releasing the ArcGIS 10.9. ArcMap is not get updated anymore. So ArcMap stop at 10.8.1. Okay. You can still use it, but there is no more defaultment in ArcMap. And in Pro, every single release, we try to implement more user ideas. Okay, so in 2.7, about 50 user idea, there's a link here that you can go to user idea and say, I want to see this in ArcGIS Pro. It's a lot of people vote on that. It maybe happen. And a lot of these user ideas that we implemented in ArcGIS Pro, half of them or even more than half is actually ArcMap equivalent. A small thing in ArcMap that you got used to, we try to make it happen. Okay. So in 2.8, the one thing that I want to mention to you in here, anybody new with ArcGIS Pro, maybe your students or yourself, there is a link directly to the resources. What's new? The latest one, quick start, all the learn lessons on Pro is also have the link in here. Or if you come from ArcMap, there's also a link how to get started with ArcMap user, import your map document, migrating, and all this discovery path is basically is learn path. All the lessons that you can use for yourself, for self-learning, or also for the student audience. So it's right there with all the link when you start ArcGIS Pro. Okay. Now, this is important, I think. ArcGIS Pro is not one-to-one swap with ArcMap, okay, because it is designed to support web GIS. It is designed to connect to the web as well. You can disconnect if you like, but whenever you want to publish, share, or get the data from the web, you can do it easily in ArcGIS Pro. So sometimes when the professors say like, can you help to translate my content from ArcMap to ArcGIS Pro? I would say like, it's not one-to-one, it's tedious. ArcMap is tedious, it's so many clicking. But in ArcGIS Pro is actually less. And it's probably you want to implement the new workflow to do the similar thing like suitability analysis, but it's shorter way to do it in ArcGIS Pro. So it's not really one-to-one swap with ArcMap. Hope that makes sense. To repeat, ArcGIS Pro supports seamless integration to the web GIS. We know that we have two big portals in the web GIS. You can have the ArcGIS Online, which is software as a service that we hosted at Esri, and you can use it to manage data, you manage content, or manage user. But we also have the ArcGIS Enterprise. I'm not sure if your university have ArcGIS Enterprise, which is the similar with ArcGIS Online, is a portal, but you set it up in your own infrastructure, meaning you have the server, you set up the security, you set up the bandwidth, you set up the container for your content. You can have it on premise in your campus, or you may work with like Amazon Cloud or Azure to have it there. But the idea in here is ArcGIS Pro is a client to the web. So ArcGIS Pro can consume the data from the cloud or from the web, or also publish to the web. Okay. Similar with other apps that we have as well. So if you notice, when you start working with Pro, you have access to your own local machine, but you also have access to the portal, meaning it's either ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, and getting the content from that. Okay. You can have your own content, or you can have the content that's shared within the whole campus organization, but you also can go and then get the content from what we call Living Atlas. Let's talk about the Living Atlas in here. Living Atlas is what we call Living Atlas. The world is thousands of ready-to-use maps and data set curated by Esri, but also our partners. Okay. So if you're teaching, then the student need, for example, the world layer, or they need elevation layer, they need demography. Instead of going and try to find the raw data, maybe go here and use it. It's available. It's many of them, and million of data. So you can go there and then check if you can use it. Can you use it for analysis? Yes. And you can keep the result? Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna show it in my exercise. Okay. And one thing about the ArcGIS Pro, when you create a project, it has everything. Okay. So you can have the you can even use a template. So if you keep doing the same thing again and again, you create your own template. You can. Okay. You can customize the user interface, the layout, the look and feel, the arrangement. You can change them in ArcGIS Pro. Even you can say like, I want the dark ArcGIS Pro background. You can have it. Okay. And as I said, when you're working at the project, you get everything. You have the template of the map, the toolbox, the notebook, the data set, the folder, task. So when you package it, it's packaged everything. So you don't have to have the relative path to this. You have to do that. No, it's actually really nice to package. And the one thing about package is not only package locally, but you can share it to the web as well. Okay. So maybe if you're a professor that teaching, you create the project, you share it on the ArcGIS Online, so the student can just download it from ArcGIS Online. That's the beauty of that. And one thing that I like as well, it has a history. So if I'm a researcher, I do a lot of running tools, running all the spatial analysis. I want to see what is my history in here. Okay. So you can see that list of your history. And the beauty of the history is you can even run it again if you like to. Okay. And one thing, when you run one tool, sometimes the tool takes longer, you can run another tool in the same time as well in ArcGIS Pro. Okay. Or you can still working on something else when the tool running. So it's nice. Okay. All right, so there is a few things that I would like to mention in here that make life easier with ArcGIS Pro if you just started with ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro is based on ribbon contextual user interface. Okay. It's different with ArcMap. ArcMap, all the tools, you can just add it. Add all the tools, then it's there in front of you. As Joseph said, the ArcGIS Pro is not like that. So how the ArcGIS Pro show all this ribbon is based on the content. So if you don't look for the tool first in the ribbon, but look at your content. So if you select one of the content, like this layer, new building, all the tools appear to support the type of their content. like point, line, polygon. If you notice in here that there is a standard one, but there is a contextual menu, meaning it's only appear if you select certain layer. So in this case, it's the feature layer. So then it's additional appearance, labeling, and data available. Okay? If you do not select that, it will not appear. That's the one that make a lot of ArcMap user frustrated because they don't know where to find things. Okay? Now, there's a few other things that I can point out later on how to help you. So this is the ribbon. It starts with we have what it's called tab. So there is a project tab, there is a map, insert, analysis. Inside of the tab, we have what is called group of the tools. Inside of the group, you have button. Okay? And if you hover to each of these buttons, you get this screen tip appear as well. Remember, not everything appear at the same time. You're also gonna get the contextual tab depending of the type. If you select imagery, this is gonna change. If you select the feature layer, point, line, polygon, this is gonna change. If you select layout, all this will change as well. Okay? So remember, look at your content first before you go and look at the ribbon. It sounds simple, but I learned it in the hard way here. Okay? And there is a few things also that we make it simpler than ArcMap, less tedious. For example, editing. In ArcMap, when you want to start ArcMap, you start with start editing. We just think it's not needed. Well, you just go and start creating the feature or modifying the feature or deleting the feature. And at the end, do you want to save it or you want to start or undo, redo? So there is no start editing anymore. You just edit directly. Same like identify button. You just click on the map. It's like you click in other web map application. You click on the map, you get the pop-up. So you don't have to click on identify button, for example. Okay, hope that makes sense. All right, so I'm gonna go and then do some demos in here, and feel free if you want to follow along with me. But before I do that, is there any comment? Is there any questions? Is everything okay? What do you think, Joseph?
Well, we have, Dr. Becky there being the geospatial librarian. She's got a good question about the following. So for example, if someone is accessing, how we've got a couple of different license options. If someone's accessing this with a single use license, do they have access to the online portal? I think they do, but I thought maybe you could weigh in here, Canserina.
Yes, very good, Becky. I have the section on that, but let's cover that question. When we have more than one licensing with Pro. If you go with the single-use license, you switch it to single-use license. I will do that if I have, ArcGIS Pro is always connecting to the web, right? But if I have to go to the field, I don't have internet connection, then I switch the license to single use. However, that means I work locally in my computer only. When I ready to share it to the web, I click the share button, it will ask me to authenticate and log in into my portal. It's either in ArcGIS Online or it's ArcGIS Enterprise. Yeah. Otherwise, everything you work, it just work locally in your C drive, for example. And also, you cannot access the base map. You cannot access, well, if you have internet, of course you can, don't worry about that. But if you want to publish, it will authenticate you using your name user. Thank you. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go real quick here on the, this is kind of like a demo with that I already recorded in here. You can follow it if you like. I just want to show in your ArcGIS Pro, when you started, there's one thing, if you have many projects, it's listed, but you can pin it and unpin it if you like. Okay. And if you want to start new, you can start with the template, maybe that have a map, or you just start without a template. Okay, so you can do. Okay. And then you can also go to the resources, as I mentioned earlier. You can click what's new, for example, or you want to say like getting started with ArcMap user. So when you click, then boom, it's open in your browser. For ArcMap user, what is the user interface that I mentioned earlier, how to get started, how to bring your map documents into here, how to import the map documents. So you can actually watch the video first and then follow the instruction in here. As I mentioned, it's a lot of resources to migrate to ArcGIS Pro. Okay. So on the top of the migration as well, we have the Try ArcGIS Pro. It's kind of like a series of short lessons. When you finish this, your knowledge probably will be catch up with Joseph and I. So this is really a lot of this. Okay, and again, it's a lot of video, it's a lot of topics that you can do with ArcGIS Pro in here. Okay. So there is a question in here, what is the best requirement for ArcGIS Pro? I'm gonna talk about that a bit later as well to show you what it is. Okay. So now what I'm gonna show in here is if you want to open a project in ArcGIS Pro, okay, there is one thing in here. You actually can connect to your portal, or you can connect to your own computer. So the portal one is the one that in this case, I connected to my ArcGIS Online, and then I can access my own content, or I can go to ArcGIS Online. So if you go to ArcGIS Online, there is actually a tutorial, if you like. You just can do the searching. It's called Introducing ArcGIS Pro. Okay. This is the way as well you can do the same thing, packaging an ArcGIS Pro project and put it in the cloud and ask your student to download it like this. Okay. So and then you can then it will be downloaded. It will be part of the local. Okay. So this project here, I'm gonna give all the link into this project. The beauty of this is it shows you that here there is the import map, if you like. That's how you import your existing ArcMap, ArcGlobe, or theirs to that. Or you can create a new one. You can create as many different type of the map. Just remember, if you want to add something like a layout, you go to the insert the map, insert the layout, import the map from that. Okay, but every tab give you different things that you can do in this analysis. Okay, so this is an analysis tab. So you can do the raster function if you like, or you can just click the tools. When you click the tools, then it's open the geoprocessing. We have hundreds of tools. So I will suggest you to put the favorite one that you like, or you type in as well in the search. So if you want to search something, for example, let me put like buffer. Okay, so many buffer tools, and you can click like which one do you want. Okay. You can put like deep learning, machine learning, then it will show you all the tools, and you can actually click on that tool and it will show you where is the location of the tool. So it's within, this buffer is within the analysis tools proximity buffer. Okay. So that's the one that I like. And then you can stack all this pan here together, and you can see that history, I mentioned about history before already. Okay. So the rest is, again, every tab gives you different thing. You can open the catalog pane, or catalog view is almost like our catalog if you get used to with that. And then you can also work with the Python's window and everything. And I mentioned about the edit already. You don't have to start editing. And there is a tab for the imagery as well, sharing, more for the sharing of that. Okay, sharing to the web, that's what I mean. Okay. So every single tab is doing give you a different group and different tools as well. All right, so the content in here, you can have many maps. Okay, this is the beauty of that. In ArcGIS, ArcMap is harder for you to have many maps, but in here you can have it. And I show you earlier with that, if you select one of the layer, it's come what it's called contextual menu on the top. Right? So it's only appear when you select certain layer. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Okay? So this one is just a building here. So you can take a look of the appearance. Maybe you want to change the symbology. You want to do swipe. You want to put transparency. You want to put the scale dependency. All of them you can do it in this appearance tab. Okay. And we also improve the performance for you to do the symbology in here. Data is important. This is when you select the data, then you can actually work with your attribute table, the field, the subtype, the domain, the attribute rules, you know, all of this is actually available. Okay. All right, how we doing here? Okay, there's one thing in here that I want to show you, that you can, as usual, you can open the table. And one thing about the table, you can open it by right-click on the layer, or you can open it from the attribute table, and you always can position it anywhere you like. Okay. So in here is maybe you need a bigger landscape, so just put it next to your map. That's okay. So you can have as many as you like next to your map. Okay, it's easier to read as well. And then one other thing is you also can have the 3D. All the landscape will different. Your mouse will be able for you to zoom and out directly and tilt it, and so you can actually do it. And then you can also do the identify on your 3D and as well, and get the result. I think that's probably will take a while for that one. Okay, I speed it up a bit. Okay, so you get the result on here. Okay. And one thing the cool thing that I think I want to show you is how you can, sometimes you want to see 2D and 3D in the same time, you can do it. So this is the 2D of the same area, and this is the 3D. So what you can do here is you can actually see them side by side. Okay, so if I go into the 3D here, the content will look different as well on the drawing order in here. So it's working with the 3D, and you get see everything differently. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put them side by side. So in the view here, you can take a look that there is something called link view. Okay. So you can just link view by center only, or link view and then scale them. But you need to put them side by side. So this is what I'm gonna do, put side by side in here. So you have a lot of toggles that you can put, you know, side by side between them. And then once you do that, you can just link them. Okay, just link them in the center. This one is just the link. Okay, but if you like, then you can do the link and also doing the scaling as well. Okay, so maybe some of you know this already. So if I go back into here, instead of the center, I choose the center and scale. Okay. So now when I go into zoom in one, it's zoom on the other one. Okay. So sometimes you need that. It's not only 2D and 3D, 2D and 2D is also you can. It's just like anything that you want to link between them, you can do that. Yeah. And you can just unclick it if you finish with that. Right? So hopefully that helped. Don't forget we have layout. And again, with the layout, you can have many layout if you like to. The new enhancement with the layout, if you put the text, you can make the accessible text. So if you convert this to PDF, you can edit it in PDF as well. Okay. So okay, that's one thing. And don't forget, everything is listed. If you close them, you can always go to the catalog. You can open it again. You can connect to other folder. So they all still there if you like to. Yeah. How is it so far? I think there's a question. Is it possible to select one feature that will be selected in the second one too? That's a good question. I have to try though. What do you think, Joseph?
Do you mean in the 2D map and the 3D scene?
Yeah, when you link them.
simultaneously?
Yeah, when them link them, so you select in one, you select on the other.
If they're tied to the same feature service, I don't know why they would not be selected, because you're pointing to the same thing, but it would be good to try it.
Yes.
Also,
Okay.
while you're tinkering around in there, Rena, there was a good question, and we may grapple with this later when you talk about licensing, but Joe K was saying, if you scroll up a little bit, I think you could probably, or maybe Joe can chime in and we could talk about it either now or later on. Okay, so there's about the virtualization and access. Cool. Okay, just wanted to make sure you saw that.
Yes, yes, we're gonna talk about that too, for sure. Okay. I just have one last thing that I want to show you. This is just to demoing how you actually do analysis using your own data and also using the data from the web. I think it's cool that this is about the data on the earthquake. So I have just a new map here in my ArcGIS Pro, and I have this Excel. You all probably have this. This is from Joseph, actually. This is about the major earthquake, higher than 4.5 in magnitude, and it has a location, lat and long. How you add it into the map. So in add data in Pro, you have many choices. You put like XY point data, road data, you know, multi-dimensional raster data, elevation, extract location from a text. You can do it all. So I just choose the one, and a lot of things that you choose is actually a geoprocessing tool. So you open it as a geoprocessing tool. And what I do in here is I just want to convert my Excel, and you can easily drag and drop from your Window Explorer into the tools. Okay, and then you get the, you know, what the feature class that you want. By default is going to your default geodatabase, or you can choose something else, and then you run it. Okay, every time you run it, it gives you the, you can always go to the view details, so you can see if there is any error, if there is any message. You can always run it again by opening the history as well. So this is the point of the major earthquake. Okay, you can change the symbology as well if you like to. And then what you can do in here is, again, if you need to access the history, you can do that. But what I try to do in here is, this is a good point, but I want to know which country that have the major earthquake. Okay, so to do that, I need to have the layers of countries, and I don't have it, the layer of countries. So what I can do here is I can go into this is taking, yeah, I can go to the catalog in here and go to the portal. And in the portal, that means that I'm going look for the data. It's, I don't have it in my content. Maybe I search in my organization, but what I try in here is from the Living Atlas of the World. So as I mentioned earlier, Living Atlas of the World have so many ready to use data. So I can just go world countries, and all this data is in the web services. Okay, so there's a few. I'm gonna just use the generalized one and add it to the current map. Okay, so now I have the layer from the Excel, and I have the layer from for the country. And I just go into the geoprocessing tool. You all know that we can do spatial join. So we spatial join from the country into the point, then you can get the result of another country, but then you can actually doing the symbology, and then you can use the attribute like graduated color symbol using the join count. Okay, so then you know which country have the highest earthquake in here. Okay, and you can play with the symbology, the color scheme, you know, all of this. So the beauty in here is the result, it's yours, is actually save it in your geodatabase, but for the analysis, you use the data from the web. All right, so you can save it anytime. On the top, there is a quick access of the buttons that you can use, and you can always, now this is the last one, I promise, Joseph, this is the last demo that I have. I just want to show you something. This is a layer that I have, which is state, but we have so many attributes, okay? What you can do new is called bivariate symbology. So you can choose more than one attribute. For example, I want to symbolize using total population, but then another attribute may be about the generation X. Okay, so maybe I choose generation Z. Okay, and then you can get this color scheme. Okay, and you can choose which one, and then it's many of them. Okay, you can select by name as well. Now the same thing you can do in Pro, and you can also do it in ArcGIS Online. So from the coloring here, the color scheme, you can see which state have the highest number of population and the highest number of generation Z, or the one that low and low, or high and low. So many of you working with so many attributes, this is the way that you don't have to keep adding the same layer again and again, but you actually blend them together. Okay. So I think that's all I have, Joseph. I'm gonna return back to you to do the other demo. How about that?
Yes, and as we transition to that, just a few comments. First of all, folks, this idea, that is now a reality of you, for example, doing a spatial join with data that's up there in the cloud, that's kind of a transformational paradigm shift, isn't it? Because in the past, we've had to download everything in order to do something with it and analyze it. And I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't lost in all the wonderful things that Canserina shared, because truly that is a transformational moment in GIS. Ditto for other things that we could mention, and I'll just mention a couple of them here along the same sort of paradigm shifting lines. On a related note, in the Living Atlas, you've got the American Community Survey, and you're going to have shortly all the 2020 census data. Now, we've all had probably versions of the following lesson. You have the students go out to census.gov, and this is a bit painful for me to say because I used to work at Census as a geographer, and you would go and get the Tiger Line files, and you'd get the the block groups and the zip codes and the census tracts, and then you'd get your demographic data, and then you'd have to join it. And that was my version of that, is like a 35-page lesson from the time that they download to the time they're actually analyzing and in some sort of real world scenario. Like I've got one on citing a high-speed internet cafe type of thing with the demographic data. But the point is, okay, that built character, right? We all learned about joining from activities like that. I would just submit that you don't have to. There are other ways, as Rena, I think, very well illustrated, of teaching core concepts in geospatial technology. Just because you and I went to the census site and did all that, processing of the data before we could actually do any analysis, I don't think that all of those workflows are necessarily something we need to force our students to actually go through, because they're never going to actually do that in the workplace. They're going to use these services. Now, that being said, I think it's even more critical and this isn't an aside, I think it's germane to this whole conversation of really getting into the questions with students, with colleagues. Where did that data come from? Who created it? How often was it updated? What scale was it created at, et cetera? It's even more important now when, as you saw with Canserina's demo, where you've got your content and right next to it in another pane, and that's P-A-N-E, not P-A-I-N. Ha ha ha, little geo pun for you. P-A-N-E, and in your pane, in the content pane, you've got your content, and you've got your content in ArcGIS Online, and then you've got other people's content in ArcGIS Online, and you've got the Living Atlas, which is a subset of ArcGIS Online that's authoritative and it's got metadata. It doesn't mean it's perfect, right? We're still trying to model the imperfect three-dimensional world onto a two-dimensional or even a three-dimensional scene inside a map or a geodatabase, et cetera, right? So it's still a transformation. Maps are representations of reality. They're not reality. That said, they're very useful representations, but the point is, it's even more critical because you've got all this amazing content at your fingertips to know where it is. Even though it looks like it's all right there in your content pane, you have access to all of it. Be critical of it, know where it came from, etc. Okay. But another example, circling back to that example of you've got this access to these data sets, another tried and true was, okay, I'm going to create a, like right here behind me, the best place for, I don't know, some sort of site on the landscape. It could be a study site for studying, the Green River Formation or the Manco Shale here behind me here in Western Colorado. So I've got, the tried and true method of I'm going to go out and download all the USGS DEMs and the land use land cover data, and I'm going to process it locally with ArcGIS Pro. Again, that's one of those kind of, standard activities that we have in our sort of arsenal, but there's a service. There's an elevation service. And there's a land use service. So you've got slope and aspect all sitting out there. Now, again, know how those things were derived. Don't just accept them because they're on the web and they're easy to use. But still, having the students actually going out and processing that and downloading all those little tiles, whereas wouldn't it be better to band an area in on a web map and say, I want all the slope information at this resolution for that area? Because, I think it's still instructive to have students kind of dig into the messiness of data. Nothing wrong with that, and I think that's still important. But I'm just trying to, again, nudge the community into thinking about, gosh, there's new tools as we're learning about here in today's workshop. But there's also an implication for how do we teach these skills and what skills should we be teaching as we move forward in this decade? That's what I wanted to share. So, wonderful to be able to, tie off on your joining to the cloud arena with these generalized data sets. And why did you use the generalized countries? Because you didn't really want to have on the web processing of all those little islands off Ellesmere Island in Canada. There may have been an earthquake there, but again, would the results have been any different if you were to use the detailed countries? Maybe, maybe not. That'd be a good experiment to run. Maybe there was an earthquake on some tiny, tiny island somewhere. I also, by the way, have an extension to that activity where I haven't quite finished this yet, but probably like many of you, it's on my list of, lessons to develop. But I also have the world oceans. And one could argue that it's all one ocean, but we care about earthquakes and oceans. Wouldn't it be great to do the join and also figure out, okay, how many are in the Pacific? How many are in the National Geographic new designated Southern Ocean? How many there are in the Arctic, et cetera? So you got the oceans to consider for your spatial join as well. Very, very interesting. All right, folks. How are you folks doing? Do you need a break? Are we talking too much? Are we? We only have a 2-hour workshop, but we're fine to give, a couple minutes if you need to take a breather. There's silence.
People seem ambivalent, but I would perhaps ask that we just take 5 minutes, and that way. Oh.
Thanks, Dr. B.
It's true.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, Becky. Becky, you're the boss. So if you say 5 minutes, we'll do that.
Okay.
That's
Awesome.
5 minutes is good. Yes, thank you.
If you don't want to take a break, stay here.
Yeah, feel free to talk with us. Okay.
Yeah, we could play the kalimba. We could do all kinds of fun things here. No, we'll see you in 5.
It the best. All right.
Hi, this is
Hi.
sorry. I just want to have a question about you. You are familiar with the hydraulic engineer center tools that used to be one of the applicable tools on ArcMap, like RAS mapper, right? And I was wondering if there is any other new releases of those tools that can be added to ArcPro as well, because some of major advantages of the RAS mapper that has a kind of a GIS features is to be connected with the ArcGIS Pro, if that was the case, as well as with the ArcMap. So I wonder if there is any kind of future for that as well in ArcPro, or it's just only compatible with ArcMap.
Is that created by us at Esri, or I think this is by FEMA, huh? Is that?
Not FEMA. It's a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer tool that is HEC means Hydraulic Engineering Center, that the RAS is a river analysis system. So that is just for routing flood across a land. So, and they are now in their latest version 6 that does a lot of GIS work as well. But they used to be connected with ArcMap. They had a tool in ArcMap that was made by them that can give you some ability for watershed modeling, watershed analysis, flood modeling, and use the data that was produced in HEC-RAS to better show or highlight via ArcMap. But I was not sure if they had transferred that into ArcPro as well. I searched it for.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the HEC one. I just wondering, actually look for information if they already upgraded or not upgraded, if they creating a version for ArcGIS Pro. But in Esri, we have what you have the I don't know if it's similar to. The problem is I don't familiar with the HEX one, but I think if there is any similar tools that you can use similar with that. Have you?
There was a kind of tool called ArcHydro, but the one, but I definitely remember there was a tool in ArcMap that was connected with HEC-RAS. And that was a really helpful tool because you can make a good connection with the results from that hydraulic model to be better highlighted or even edited in the ArcMap. But they had a lot of promotion in the latest version of HEC-RAS that you can do GIS works even inside the program, not just as a third-party program to be used for visualization. But I was wondering if those tools that used to be in the original version of ArcGIS, that is ArcMap, are still existed or are going to be included in the ArcPro as well. That was my
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the one that I can answer in here is there is a community chat on this. It seems like in 2019 somebody mentioned that he heard that Global Mapper is starting to support the HEX-RAS, but there is no more news on that. What we can do is actually, if you know the tools that they use in ArcMap, I can find if that tool is already.
I'm going to I'm going to Google it because I used to use that tool.
Yes, that's probably easier. But the HEC GeoRAS extensions, it's neat that that team.
That was my ArcGIS. That is
Yes.
my that was the tool that I'm talking about.
Yeah, but it seems like the discussion is ended without yet they created that. Okay, I'll find out more if there is any new update after
because that was a really helpful tool, because you could do a lot of, even outside the HECRAS tool, you could do a lot of work within the ArcGIS. But that would be a really good connection between those tools, because US Army had a lot of updates for their latest version of HECRAS that has a lot of GIS features, but it would be also better to just transfer some data from HECRAS to ArcPro, because back to ArcGIS, due to that slow processing of the program, that makes you a little hard time to process through the work.
Absolutely.
But I'm happy that ArcPro is quite faster and easier to handle. Therefore, I was thinking whether HECRAS and ArcPro had any connection as ArcMap and HECRAS had before.
I will find out after this workshop. It seems like in March this year, somebody asking as well about what is the updates on this, but nobody respond on that. I'll see if internally somebody at Esri know the answer to that. We'll get back to you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, Joseph, back to you.
Do you want to answer Joe K's question, Rena? I do not know, Joe, about that, but as Rena is indicating with our other colleagues on here today,
which one
we have it's just right up from the very bottom. We have a sort of a direct line with our development team and with other industry teams like utilities, natural resources, etc. And they actively ask us about, hey, what is the educational community asking for? What do they need? So that's one of the services that we can actually provide you all, is if you've got a tool that doesn't exist, or if you've got a workflow that you're wondering about, if you don't find it in that Esri community set of pages and technical assistance, then we actually do have an avenue. They don't do everything we say. They've got a lot of other priorities as well with other users, but we do have the nice advantage of being able to go directly to them and saying, look, this is what the UMass community, et cetera, is asking for. What is the status of this particular set of developments? So yeah, good question, Joe, but maybe Rena can grapple with that at some point. Okay. Yes, indeed. Okay, so folks, I'm hoping you're seeing this demo slide up here. What we want to do with you all next is to go through some standard workflows where you take data that's up in this, ArcGIS online environment, and it could be on another server. It doesn't have to be an ArcGIS online. Increasingly, cities, counties, other governments, nonprofits, universities, and others actually have these data portals, which is a wonderful thing. And oftentimes they're using, and this is, I think, another component of modern GIS, but they're using ArcGIS Hub to serve the data. When I find a data portal that's actually using Hub, I kind of rejoice. I know this sounds a little bit geeky. I inwardly rejoice, because it's so much easier to use, and you've got all kinds of options. Streaming the data, downloading the data, and if you want to download it, here are some formats that you can download it into. I mean, it just provides organizations hosting data with a lot of nice capabilities that they don't have to do all kinds of web development. They can just set up a Hub site and serve the data. I write about that quite a bit in the Spatial Reserves data blog, which I touched on earlier in our discussion about where do I find data? How do I know if it's any good? Well, for one source, it's 1-800-CALL-BECKY, right? Because she's the geospatial librarian, and those librarians know everything, right, Becky? But secondarily, this might provide a good resource, because my colleague and I update it every week. And one of the things that we wrote just a week ago was, hey, be aware of default settings in GIS software, including ArcGIS Pro. Know how to override them. know when to override them. Sometimes the defaults are, well, the defaults are there for good reason because it takes care of a lot of different data users' needs, but your needs might be more specific and different from the default. So the whole idea here is showing some examples of if you take the defaults with certain set of imagery, you're going to get these kinds of results. And if you override those defaults, you could dig into some aspects of, in this case, land use, land cover change, etc. So that's what this blog is all about. Spatial reserves. It came originally from an Esri Press book that we wrote, but it's all about where to find data, how do I know if it's any good, and societal issues like copyright, privacy, location privacy, data quality, and other things that are designed so that they're short conversation starters with students and colleagues. So we designed it to be very useful and approachable. Hopefully it's of use to you all. Okay, so that's the spatial reserves resource, and I'm going to put that here in the chat box. Coming back to our next section here with you fine folks, and again, thanks for being here today. It's really great to interact with you all. We don't have all the answers, but this is always really helpful for us to hear what you folks are asking questions about. And we're quite transparent. If we don't know the answer, we don't, you know, I've been around GIS long enough. It's you don't bluff. You say, I don't know, we'll find out. And of course, that's what we want to model with teaching with GIS, right? You're journeying with the students. There used to be at some point in the not too distant past, sort of one way to teach and learn GIS, right? With some variation, because instructors have always been very, creative. That's partly why they're instructors. They love being creative with all of this. But there was kind of a path. And now the good news, challenging news, is that there are lots of different pieces of this platform. So what do you actually include in your courses, your degree programs, your certificates, et cetera? How do you put in the field tools? Do you put in the web mapping applications like story maps and dashboards? Do you go into spatial analysis? And if you do you use ArcGIS Online first? Do you use Pro first? Use some combination? Do you use other tools like Business Analyst Web? I mean, there's lots of choices. And because of that, I think there's a bit of uncertainty in the education community, rightly so, because there are choices. Way back in the Stone Age, when I was a kid in the 20th century, there was like wheat bread and white bread. Okay, there may have been pita bread, maybe. And now, what kind of choices do you have? Gluten-free, etc. Okay, so it kind of follows other things in society. But in this particular demo, we want to go through a sort of standard work, or is that dating myself? Anyway, the point is, we want to go through some standard workflow here. You got some data on the web, in a portal, in ArcGIS Online in this case, and you're going to use that data. You're going to process it locally and run some analytical tools that Rena was kind enough to go through with us a moment ago. Some of those. You're going to do some standard selections, select by location, select by attribute, and you're going to run some analysis tools. And then at the end, after you kind of go full circle, you're going to put it back up into ArcGIS Online so that others can see the results of your analysis, which is a wonderful capability that we have at our fingertips now, right? As you know, this ArcGIS Pro is a connected desktop. As Canserina shared earlier, you can run it without being signed into your ArcGIS Online account, but it has a lot more power and capability if you're actually signed in. And that goes with a lot of tools nowadays, right, folks? I mean, you're using Office 365 and so on, and Dropbox and OneDrive, and you've got your music in the cloud. I mean, there's so many advantages. There are some challenges, to be sure, right? If you have all the data on your drive, sure, it may be dated and it might not be connected to the Internet of Things. You might not be getting yesterday's or 5 minutes ago stream gauging stations, but one of the advantages of having every single thing local is that when you're teaching with it, it works. It's right there. And so the bit of a challenge is, okay, if I'm going to use the tornado data from NOAA on a service, is it going to be there tomorrow when I need it? So we can talk about how to grapple with some uncertainty with some of these services. To be sure, that occasionally happens. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often, but have a plan B, and we can talk about strategies in a bit. But this is the idea with you all in this next short bit together. Here are, I know this sounds like this looks like a big list of things, but really won't take you long. And for those of you that want to actually do this, I'm going to walk you through just about a minute or two of the intro part of this. And then I'm going to turn you loose for a short time, maybe 10-ish, 15 minutes-ish. And then I'm going to come back and recap some of the things that I'm going to hit the highlights, probably touch on most of these that, so if you don't actually want to do this on your own in that block, the independent study block, we will summarize, so don't stress. Either way is good, okay? We want to make this useful for you all. But you're going to start with this zebra mussels layer. This is an invasive species that probably most of you are familiar with that is a very big problem in many waterways. Because they attach these little creatures, they attach themselves to boats, and then they migrate to different waterways and then displace, as many invasive species do, displace the natural species that are there. So it is a problem, and it's one of those 21st century issues that we want people to understand, not just in terms of zebra mussels, but invasive species overall. Why is that an issue? That's, to me, why we're teaching GIS. Because we want students to be change agents, right? We want them to be empowered to use these tools to make smarter decisions no matter what field they go into in the future. So when you go to step one here, and I'm going to leave this screen open when we actually have our independent blocks, so you don't have to be nervously scribbling these down. And also, this whole presentation, Becky's going to share with you all. So she'll put it up, right, Becky, on your site, and you'll have all these slides and all these links and so on and so forth, as well as the recording. Oh, yeah, the recording. We're being recorded here. Maybe I should make sure I'm looking proper here. Is there a touch-up thing for my screen in Zoom where I can erase 20 years? Okay, all good. But when we open up the zebra mussels feature layer, it's a feature layer. So you're going to open it up. It's going to be sitting there, and hopefully you're seeing my ArcGIS Online screen now. Yep, good. Inside ArcGIS Online. So Canserina touched on this a bit ago. You have some choices here. You can open it in the map viewer, and you even have a choice there, right? You've got the map view classic, which existed from 2010 till earlier this year, and now we've replaced it with the new map viewer based on the new JavaScript 4.x API, faster, more functional, etc. So you've even got choices in the map viewer. ArcGIS Online has about 40 analytical tools, so keep that in mind. It's got buffering and overlay and geocoding and some powerful things that you can structure a research study around or even teach entire courses around. Now, today, our workshop is focused on Pro, so we've got these choices in desktop. We talked about ArcMap a bit ago, but we can actually open it up inside ArcGIS Pro. If we do, it's going to open some of you have probably encountered this in the past, it packages up the pointers to the data and allows you to open it up in ArcGIS Pro. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to share a different screen where I actually have Pro running. And let's just do that. And so now I'm going to share this screen, and hopefully you're seeing this in ArcGIS Pro. Yes? You've got a bunch of red dots where all the zebra mussels are located.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, super. Thanks for confirming. I should have another monitor. I should have a fourth monitor here, right? So I can actually log in as an independent person and see what you're seeing. But anyway, thanks for confirming there. So you've got it inside ArcGIS Pro. Right now, if I right click, and when you're going through this workflow, this touches on what Canserina was sharing earlier. You want to have those contextual menus. So oftentimes what you want to do is you want to say, okay, on this layer, what choices do I have? So in this case, I'm going to right click on this zebra mussels data download feature layer. And as you probably suspect, if I go to properties and go to source, indeed, the URL is actually going to services.arcgis.com. Why? Because it's still actually on ArcGIS Online. I'm using it inside Pro, but it's online, right? It's actually online. So one of the things I have you do in this activity is you're going to save it to a geodatabase on your device. Now, again, what's better to do it, online or on your device? Well, in this case, you're not going to be able to actually manipulate the data if you're not the owner of it online, because it's my layer. I got it from the USGS and I've got it documented and so on. But does that make sense? So you're actually going to be able to use it and manipulate it if you use it inside your own, on your device, geodatabase. Now, if it is your layer in ArcGIS Online, you can, of course, manipulate that layer. If you're signed in, and notice in the upper right here of my ArcGIS Pro session, I'm actually signed into my particular organization, which in my case is the Esri Denver Regional Office. But what you're going to do is you're going to open it up there. And another thing, just a couple more things to point out before I turn you loose here. One of the things is, you know, on the catalog, this touches on what my colleague was sharing earlier, where you've got, okay, I've got my project here and I can make a default geodatabase and save this into my default geodatabase or put it somewhere else on my device. But I also have this portal zone where I've got my content, and wow, what are all these folders right here? They're folders inside ArcGIS Online in my organizational account, the one in the Esri Denver Regional Office. Of course, yours will be UMass or whatever org you're using. But then I also have, of course, groups that are in ArcGIS Online. I've got the capability of going to ArcGIS Online in general and seeing, ooh, what other content is out there in ArcGIS Online? And how can I filter and search effectively so I can find what I want in the thousands and thousands and thousands of layers that are out there? And then last but not least, the living atlas of the world that Canserina was mentioning several times, because it is, again, a subset of ArcGIS Online. It doesn't have every single data layer in it, but it's got the key ones: NOAA, NASA, Census, WHO, CDC, etc. Okay, so you've got all those sort of at your fingertips. The last thing to mention here is that as you open this, notice that it's not in Web Mercator. Ooh, okay, that's good to know. But also notice the position of the map. That should give you a clue as to the data. And one of the things that you're going to do in the data is you're going to open the attribute table. So we're going to get into the I part of GIS, right? The G part being the map or the 3D image or whatever, 3D scene or whatever we're going to use. But if I scroll over here to latitude and longitude, and you probably know what I'm going to do next, right? I'm going to sort this. I'm going to sort ascending. So that very first record in there, it has no latitude, longitude. And where is it probably thinking it is? Because it's null and null. It's at 0 longitude, 0 latitude, which of course is right up here in the upper right-hand corner of my Pro image. That's why it's defaulting to looking like it is now. Why is North America, even though that's where the data is located, why is it sort of slid off to the west? Well, because it's trying to figure out, that null lat long, I'm going to put it at 0, 0 for, in the case of just representing here in ArcGIS Pro. So one of the things you're going to do is you're going to go into the data set and you're going to delete that record, and then you're going to resave it to your device geodatabase. And then you're just, if you zoom to that layer after that, of course, you're just going to see North America. Okay. So the reason why I have you do that is because you can't delete the null value record, correct? You've got 6,902 zebra mussels in this data set. You cannot delete that. Why? Because it's my layer. All right. I've saved to my own ArcGIS Online account, and you can't go into someone else's layer and delete things, right? Unless you've got shared update capabilities and so on and so forth, but we're not doing that here. So that's why you need to actually have your own copy of this, and you're going to manipulate it. So I hope that makes sense in terms of the first few things that you're going to do here. Back on the sharing of that other screen now, ever so briefly. And that is over here, yes. So back over here, you're going to access that link. I'm going to actually put that link in the chat box so that you will be able to go right there and access that. Right here. And then you're going to open it up in Pro, step 2. You're going to zoom to layer. You're going to check the projection, source extent, check spatial reference. You'll see that it's in Lambert, I believe. And then you're going to actually do feature class to feature class, and you're going to output it to a local GBD on your device. That's pretty much what I've gone through in the first little part of the demo. I'm going to turn you loose now And you're going to go through as much as you can. Don't stress. I'm going to bring you back in maybe at 35 after. So give you about 15 minutes-ish to tinker with this. Don't stress if you don't get to this whole thing. You'll have that data. You can always go through this on your own time. You'll be on Saturday night saying, hey, Joseph, I'm in the zebra mussels data. And of course, we'll say, wow, cool. What did you find out? So actually, it's not cool. It's a pretty serious issue, as you probably know. I was on a beach in Lake Michigan, same beach I was at when I was a kid, and I saw a mountain of these things. You cannot even walk on the beaches anymore there. There are so many, and they're sharp. They're small, but sharp. So there's just piles of these things all over the place. I mean, it looked like someone had taken a front end loader and just dumped them all on the beach, but no, they were just washed up on the beach. So really serious issue. Okay, so I'm going to have you dig into the activity and do as much as you can, and I'll bring you back, and then we'll summarize. Okay, and then we've got some other resources to share. So please come back, and we'll of course be available for chatting.
Joseph, we've got a question in the chat that I think might be relevant, and the question is from Eugenio. When you download a layer, does the author have to give permission to download it?
That is a good question.
So I noticed that you can't download this layer, this mussels layer. You can only open it.
Let me check the metadata and see if there's something I could tweak to have people actually download it. But what you're going to do in the exercise, and we'll come back to your question, is you're going to be accessing it, and then you're going to export it into a geodatabase on your device. So when you download from ArcGIS Online, you're going to download a little pointer file, that'll be in your downloads folder, and then you're going to open that, and it'll fire up Pro and point to the ArcGIS Online layer in this case. Yeah, Rena, do you want to add to that?
I just want to say that everyone that have that data, the owner of that data on the web, they can decide how they want to share it. They can share it with public, but only for viewing, or they can also enable that for downloading. Okay. But I think, Joseph, do you have that in your demo at the moment? Is that because it's not signed in yet, so you cannot download it?
Well, people are going to be able to go in and open it, and but I'm just going to check some of the settings here, because now I'm curious about that very thing. So good question. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, so again, whether you want to share it with public or organizations, or even some user creating the view of the data, so they share the view, which is you can view it, but you can download it. It's so many different settings that you can set as a data owner, how you want to share.
And I've shared it with the public, so that's why you can actually open it up in Pro, but I'm going to dig into some of these other settings.
I also wanted to add one of the features that I learned about from Joseph's Story Maps workshop earlier this spring was the favorites option. So when you view something in ArcGIS Online, up in that, you can click add to favorites, and then whether you're looking at your ArcGIS Online in the web or you're in ArcGIS Pro, there's a folders icon next to your content. And so everything you've favorited shows up there. I use that all the time now.
Yeah, now that I've favorited that, I can be in my Pro session. I'm not going to switch screens at the moment, but now in my Pro session, if I go to the cloud with the favorite star underneath it, then now, Dr. Becky, I'm seeing my zebra mussels layer in there. It could be a very big time savings, especially when you're dealing with lots of different layers, as I'm sure we all are. Thanks for reminding us. So I've got this shared with everyone. Specifically on that download question, though, I've never seen a allow downloads or not downloads. It must be wrapped up into the overall sharing option is the only thing I can figure out.
Yeah, I see you've got this drop down export data, which does not appear for other people.
Okay.
When they go to this page.
Got it. Okay.
I could see how that would be handy if you were intending to share it with people who maybe don't have ArcGIS, because then they could export it as a shapefile or a GeoJSON.
Yeah, good point. You know, if you dig into the general tab, there is that editing. If you want someone else to be able to edit it, obviously they don't. Oh, here we go. Export data right at the end there allows others to export different formats. What if I save that, and Becky, you can go there and refresh screen or something like that and see now if you've got capabilities of that you didn't have before.
Not yet.
Do I need to save it again, maybe?
Let me try, Joseph.
I did save, but the save button is grayed out, maybe because it already did it.
Yes, it's actually, once I log into my account, I get the link to export data. Becky.
And what kind of choices do you have? You have CSV, do you have?
Yeah, Excel, file GeoJSON, shapefile. Did you sign in, Becky?
Yep. Once I sign in, I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks. This is what's so good about these sessions. You always learn some things.
I wonder if this, I know, Canserina, you said you were going to touch on this before, but I'm wondering if we can return to Joe's question from earlier about, so like folks who are accessing ArcGIS Pro through a single, I can't remember the name of it.
Single sign-on? Yes.
Not single sign-on.
Oh, a name user?
Yeah.
Compare with the single use and concurrent use.
Right.
Yes, I think I have that. Joseph, and I also have the updates on the latest update capabilities section, and Joseph still have the resources to go as well. Okay. I just wondering how many of you actually doing exercise, or we can wait, or we can move on for the next topics, just for the sake of time.
Well, out of curiosity, I'm wondering, is anyone here who's trying the exercise struggling to connect to ArcGIS Online, or is everyone able to?
I just had one thing where I came in and I got the data. I found the muscle data and everything. And when I went to bring it in, it said that the browser is no longer supported, and you need an updated version.
I'm using the Chrome browser. I've also used Safari, Firefox.
Okay, I was in Chrome.
Okay.
Let's see.
Generally, that works best for this stuff. Or if you're on a Mac, a Safari browser. Interesting. We used to hear about browser issues a little bit more than we do now, but it still crops up from time to time.
See, I see what you had, where over in the right-hand side, it says open in map viewer. You know, when you have those things, you can see the muscle data. That's yours. It has muscle 1986 to 2018. And then when I click open in map viewer.
Well,
or should I do that?
You can open it in the map viewer, but you know, the idea here on this particular workshop is to open it in Pro.
Okay.
Because we're going to be able to do things that you can't do in the map viewer. But that's still interesting about the error with the map viewer.
So
is that the map viewer classic, or is that the map viewer new map viewer? Just out of curiosity.
It just says. I'm not sure which one it is.
No worries. Yeah, see if you can open it in Pro, and it should give you a little file that actually downloads, and then when you click on that file, and probably in your downloads folder or wherever your default is, it should fire up Pro. It's got that PK item.
All right, so this is the first time I'm using Pro. So at this point where I see it. Just trying to, how do I open it in Pro? Because I have the data visible at that. Do I do to add the folder? Is that?
When you click on that little downloaded, once that little file downloads to wherever your downloads default is, you should be able to just open that, and it should fire up Pro if
okay.
If you've already installed Pro on your local device. Yep.
Okay. Let's see.
But circling back to, while you're tinkering with that, Becky and Canserina and I chatting about, okay, we do have other things to share, and it'll take me just a little while to summarize what you would have done if we had more time in the workshop. But I can certainly do that if not everyone is working through the exercise, because you can do it on your own time, certainly. What are your thoughts? Should we go ahead with me summarizing what these steps actually get you to?
I think that's a good idea. Maybe just raise your hand if you're working through this right now and you have a question, or pop it into the chat. And then, yes, since we're recording, people can always rewatch if they want.
Okay, let me pull up a few things then.
I'll just comment that I remember, I think it was Forrest said, what are some things that are really different? And unless I'm terribly mistaken, what we just went through just in these few steps of like loading the hosted service and then using a tool to save it to your local geodatabase is different from the right-click data export data of ArcMap. And so I've already learned something new and appreciate this very much.
Yeah, yes, you know what, it was just like I think I mentioned a few things. The ribbon interface is different, the way that how the tools appear, and then there is other few things that I also gonna mention later on that ArcMap doesn't have it at all. So yeah.
Okay, well, I'll summarize here what you would do if we had some time. Feel free to come back to this after the workshop ends as well. It probably will take you around a half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, if you really want to dig into some of these tools in this particular activity. But on purpose, I was giving you a little bit of a backed off kind of a activity here, where I'm not going into every single, okay, click here, go here, do this, because I wanted you to think about, okay, how would I find the calculate mean center? How would I find it? I go to the analysis tool at the top of ArcGIS Pro, and the way I do it is, you know how in ArcMap, you probably had this memorized. You had the whole structure of all of the analysis tools, where tool A was located in group B. I think many of us had that structure actually memorized, or at least partially memorized. You can still look at that traditional kind of a structure of where the tools are, for example, where the overlay tools are and where the mean center tools are in the greater toolbox, or the tool set, I guess it's called. But you don't really have to do that anymore. You can do a search on just analysis tools and then search on mean center, and you will have several choices there. So for example, if I go to mean center, and I'm going to share this other screen here with you all, so you can see my ArcGIS Pro screen here. So under analysis, tools, and then I'm just going to search on mean center. And I've got, okay, I've got several choices. Identifies the geographic center of a set of features. That's exactly what I want. Is the sort of the standard explanation was, you know, you've got a bunch of features balancing on the tip of a pencil. Where is that mean center going to be in your set of features? One might ask, well, what if I don't know what the tool is named, or even a fraction of the tool? If I don't know a couple of phrases inside that tool, how do I search then? Well, then it comes back to what we were chatting about ever so briefly earlier, and that is the documentation, which is accessed over in this question mark way in the upper right, which is going to, of course, click onto a web browser, which is in a different sharing window. But the documentation is actually quite good. It's loaded with graphics, sometimes videos. And so again, thinking about approaches to instruction without over belaboring it, because I did talk about this earlier, but it's all the more reason why, if you're an instructor, that you don't need to put all this stuff in your lessons, like in the old days. In the old days, that's all the students had, is your instructions, your lab, as to how to geocode, how to buffer, how to do all that. Now, I think there's a very compelling case to be made where you as an instructor don't need to do all that. And it's actually good because of several reasons. One, the online help is much more robust. It's updated regularly. It's got nice graphics. And so number two, you as an instructor, you can actually focus on the key concepts and skills that you want your students to gather from that particular lesson, you know, the problem solving kinds of things, the grappling with the real world issues. And they get to the part in your lesson, let's say your lab, where they have to georeference a historical, I don't know, map on top of a real world coordinate system, so they can look at change over space and time. You don't actually have to put all the georeferencing steps in your lab. In the old days, you had to, but now don't do that, because the students will go out to the latest video or the tutorial or the help file to find out how to georeference if they don't know how to do that in your lab. And that actually frees you up as an instructor to not have to be stressed about, oh, I've got to curate all this stuff, and I've got to, every time the interface updates, I've got to do new screenshots. And again, I've got lots of lessons, so I'm not advocating that you do something that I'm not grappling with myself, but I'm trying to tell myself this as well. Don't put all of that stuff in your lessons. It's just going to be a continuous cycle as the pace of change accelerates. Okay, but let's go to, so that's how I would find, for example, the mean center. If I didn't know those phrases, I would go to the help. Okay, so let me share the procedures and summarize ever so briefly. A couple of the first ones here you've seen already. We go to ArcGIS Online, you find the layer that I had saved from my own ArcGIS Online account, and as you saw, you have several options. We went to the Open in ArcGIS Desktop, and we chose the ArcGIS Pro option there. Then after that, you did the following. You saw that there's this, okay, I know it's not Web Mercator. I can go and right click on that layer and figure out what projection it's in by going to properties. So I have you do that. And you also saw that there was in the table of data, there was that very first record that I have highlighted there, the I part of GIS, the information table is null for lat long. We could probably figure out where it was by looking at some of the locality information, but in this particular activity, I just have you purge it, okay? Then what I have you do is, as we were just chatting about, is, okay, checking the source and the projection that it's in. And notice also, and I've kind of got it hidden by this red box here, but as you pan around and click around on the map and use the locate tool, you notice that it's not in latitude, longitude. It's not in geographic coordinate space at all. It's in Lambert, and it's in meters, and with a false easting and false northing and all that good stuff, standard parallels. So, okay, Now you've got the data in there. You've got it inside ArcGIS Pro. I have you export it to your geodatabase using feature class to feature class. And this is where we could have a longer discussion about, best practices and managing where you're storing your local files. I still think it's important. Just let me say this for 20 seconds, and then I'll be done with it. But I still think it's important not to just, how a lot of modern computing is, it doesn't really matter so much to the program where you have things located. And as you've probably observed, students and colleagues, you're looking over their shoulder and they just save stuff wherever on their computer, right? Or even in the cloud, a combination. They have no idea where any of this stuff is folder-wise. I know it sounds a little bit old school to still care about folders and directories, but I think in GIS, there's something to be said about being organized. There's enough complexity in GIS as it is. Don't make it more complex by not being organized. I'm sure Becky says this to the library community all the time, right? It's still important to actually be purposeful about where you're storing things, because with GIS, of course, you have a lot of different files. And if you have them organized and not just saved wherever on your device, it's just going to be a lot easier for you down the road. So I have you go to a certain specific location to save that geodatabase. Now that you've deleted the one that's null value, null island, right? It's on the null island. Deplane. Okay, the point is we deleted that, and now we just have the data set for North America as we had originally intended. So there's the grim details about the distribution of these things, started in the Great Lakes and now diffusing around to many parts of the US and Canada. So you take a look at the attributes. You, of course, right-click on the layer to get to the attribute table, as well as checking the properties and being able to export and all that stuff, as Canserina was indicating. You're clicking on the layer to figure out what you can do with that layer. And so you're taking a look at, now we're down to 6,901 records because we deleted one, and then we're symbolizing it, as you can see on the right-hand side here. As you probably suspect, that's also available on the right-hand, just going to symbolize, but unlike, okay, that's pretty similar to ArcMap, but now you've got a lot more symbology, and you've got a lot more power with the symbology than you ever had before. So that's a good thing. So I'm, the default there was natural breaks. Jenks, cartographer at the University of Kansas, rock chalk, Jayhawks. And so I can see that right now, if I take natural breaks, I'm going to map it on field date 1, and I'm getting a sense for how these things diffused, and we'll get a bigger sense when we calculate the standard deviational ellipse and the mean center. So we're then in that activity. I have you, okay, just experiment with, click on the very latest date, the 2014 to 2018, and make those a bigger symbol. And it's a bit hard to see because they're a bit scattered around. So doing some experimentation with some of the sizes of the symbols, but just kind of diving into the symbology a little bit more, changing it to quantile.
May I have a quick question on the symbology?
Sure.
Because back to ArcMap, or even I found it in ArcPro, when you have in the legend on the exporting map, on the legend side, the legend side features in the legend side are not being modified, or you are not able to edit the size, because the size is fixed with the size of the features, symbols in the map. So is there any possibility to edit the size of symbols in the legend box, but not modifying anything on the main map itself? Because that was not the case back to ArcMap, or I could not do this, but the only way was to just create another layer and put that layer below the main layer, and just try to modify the shapes of the symbols to be.
I'm going to have my colleague maybe chat with you, because I'm intruding on her, the things that she wants to cover with you all at the end. So that's an important question, and but maybe have you and Canserina chat. Okay. So yeah, it's a good question though. Thanks for bringing it up. So then I have you in this exercise do a summarize, and you get this long table that's really gnarly and hard to read. You can see that, okay, Ohio River looks like the count is more, But then in the next step, I have you do a little bit more rigorous statistics, where you actually go to the statistics function, and then indeed Ohio River, you get a sort. You're going to sort it by count on the locality, and indeed Ohio River is the 120, so it's more than any of the others. Then we're going to select by attributes and figure out, okay, there's a couple ways to do most anything inside ArcGIS Pro. You can right-click on things. Sometimes there's a menu on the top. In this case, I'm going to have you use the select by attributes on the top. You use date 1 equals 1993. Then you change the selection color, and that's under options. There's a panel on the left side of ArcGIS Pro where you got options about licensing and things like that Canserina might briefly touch on. Then after you select by attribute and you select the 1993s, you get, and you change the selection color to yellow. You've got those distributed on the map. And then I have you do a mean center. Okay, now that we've selected 1993, we're going to go to analysis. We're going to do mean center. We're going to calculate the mean center and change the symbology, which touches on what Shahab is talking about, changing the symbology. And we're going to change it to a big black cross. So that's the 1993 mean center. Then I have you change it to 2013, select by attribute, and then you have another, then you do another mean center and you symbolize it with a big green cross or whatever you want to symbolize it at. And you can see how it's migrated to the southwest. Then I have you select and make a layer out of that selection, because that's a very powerful thing. I have you tinker with the pop-ups ever so briefly and change the pop-ups. Then I have you select by location and you draw a polygon around Lake Sinclair, which is at the border of Michigan and Ontario. Then I have you buffer that, that polygon that you draw by 100 kilometers, and then you select, and indeed you get a 100-kilometer buffer of all of the selection points. So that's a select by location. And then kind of moving toward the end there, then you calculate a directional distribution or a standard deviational ellipse. In other words, how many points are within one standard deviation of that mean center? So after you do that, you get an ellipse, and I have you do that for 1993 and also 2013. And then circling back to, okay, we've downloaded from ArcGIS Online, we've done some analysis in Pro, and then the very end, what you do is you share. So you can share in a variety of different ways that we don't have time to really go over, but in brief, I have you share as a web layer. So that's one of the choices that I'm pointing to here on the mouse. You share your web layer. I'm already signed into my ArcGIS Online account, and so it's saying, hey, what do you want to share? I want to share it as a feature layer. I'm going to share it in this folder, and I'm going to share it with everyone. And then the most wonderful thing I think about this sharing area, we've all got our favorites, right, Canserina? But anyway, what I like most about this is that there's a little, and I highlighted it in yellow, manage the web layer. Once you click in there, it bounces you right to ArcGIS Online, where you can actually, as it indicates, manage your web layer. So you can share it, you can unshare it, you can add more metadata to it, etc. So that's really wonderful. It bounces you right to that folder. And so you can see there, I've got a new feature layer there, and then I've got a new service definition from the thing I just shared from ArcGIS Online, originally from Pro. So those are the steps that you go to, and I'm going to turn it over to Canserina now, because sorry about that. I've intruded on your sharing time, but I hope that was valuable. Again, go through that on your own pace and let us know what you think.
No worries, Joseph. Thank you so much. We're always thinking like, oh, we have 2 hours. We have all the time we have, but time flies. Okay, so let me just go make sure that I covered the topic that I would like to cover. Let me just share my screen first here. Let's go. And then hopefully I'm not over time, but let's see. Okay. All right, so let me see here. Okay, so about licensing a bit, I will not touch a lot, but with ArcGIS Pro, I talked with Joe as well, chatting with him privately. Basically, we have the name user license in here. That is different with ArcMap before. So with the name user account, this is the one that we recommended, is the license go with you. So you have always authenticated using username and password. And one username, you can use it with Pro, but you also can use for StoryMap, Survey 123, many other apps from Esri. So that's why we recommend it here. And you can access it from anything. You can even use this with 3 devices at the same time. Maybe you have your computer connect to Pro, then you have the mobile app connect to Survey 123. Okay, So you can use it. However, where this name user created, so the administrator can create it in ArcGIS Online, which is many university default is using ArcGIS Online to manage the user, and also can be ArcGIS Enterprise. And it can be single sign-on as well with your university ID. So you don't have to remember 2 different username and password. Okay, so you can just using your authentication using UMass. And then I know from Joe, there's a little bit problem if you use the name user with the virtual machine. We need to investigate that together. It shouldn't be like that. Okay. But we also still have the older way to give the license, which is single use and concurrent use. Single use is like Becky as the administrator give you a license file and you install it in your computer. So your computer or your laptop is licensed with ArcGIS Pro. Or it is in the lab, we have 20 computers, then there is one server, there's a license server. Okay, then it will distribute the license, but you always have to connect to that particular server to get license. You can have it, but that one we suggest it's only for the lab, for the virtual machine, or the single use if you need to go to the field that you have no internet connection. So remember, the name user always need to connect to the portal, to ArcGIS Online on the web or ArcGIS Enterprise. Okay. The beauty of this is you always can switch between this license type. Okay, so maybe one day you use single use, the other day you go back to the campus, you have to use name user. But every time you want to publish your content to the web, you always have to have the name user. So you probably start with single use license, but then you're gonna publish your layer or your map for your story map, it will ask you to sign in. Okay, so regardless you have single use or concurrent, you always need name user for sharing to the web. Okay. All right, so again, the name user is the beauty of this is it's travel with you. You can use any machine to install with ArcGIS Pro. You can access many other products that we have as an app. And also, if you get the name user Pro license, you can go download your Pro from your user setting in ArcGIS Online, and you get the latest version. Okay. So I'm gonna demo you a little bit on here is how to download. So this is my ArcGIS Online. Again, this is my web. I can always go, you probably know this already, I can always go to my setting. And then in my setting here, I can go into licenses. And if you got already a given license for ArcGIS Pro, then you get this download button. Okay. And where can you download it? You can install it in any computer that you like. Your name user go with you. Okay. Now I'm gonna demo it a little bit on how you actually switch between license. So if I go and then open ArcGIS Pro in here, and when you get started with the Pro, then you can set you need to sign in. This one is I using the name user, so I need to sign in. If your organization have already the URL, you can put the URL in that, so you can do the single sign-on. Okay. So this one, I just use the normal one that I have in my ArcGIS Online. I open the Pro. Then in here, I have a little setting that if you go into the setting here, you can always check for the update, but what I want in here is actually the licensing. So you have the configure your license option. Then you can switch between the name user license into other type. Okay. So this is you as the end user. From the name user, you change it to the single use or concurrent use. Okay. Again, you need to have the like single use license. You need to go and get it and install it before you get it license in here. Okay. When you go back to the office, open the same interface again and change that into the name user license again. All right, hope that makes sense. A little bit on the licensing then. Okay. The last thing that I want to mention to you is portal. Okay, so you get the license for Pro, but you also can actually work with different portal. For example, as a student, I connect to the ArcGIS Online for UMass, but maybe next month I'm gonna work with another research team, another school. They have a different ArcGIS Online. I have to publish to the different ArcGIS Online. So you can actually change the active portal. Okay, as you see in here, I work with so many ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise, then I sometimes have to switch between one portal to another. The license still with one particular ArcGIS Online, but the active portal, you can change them. Hope that makes sense as well. Okay. All right. Best practices system requirement, there is a question related to this. I would say that ArcGIS Pro is a graphic heavy, multi-threaded application. The more powerful that you have for your machine, especially the GPU, the better you are. We have the system ArcGIS Pro system requirement, and there is a check in here that actually you can run the check if your computer is good enough to run it. But this is very, very lower one, you know. If you can get higher in the RAM, in the CPU, and the GPU, it's good. Okay. And then it's ArcGIS Pro in Mac. Some of universities, UMass as well, use the virtual machine to help with the student in Mac. But there's some university using Parallel or Bootcamp to make Pro running in the Macs as well. So there's a variety in that. And we also have the virtualization blog that I'm gonna put the on the resources. Okay. Okay, how much is that? Oh, well, I have 3 minutes in here.
You got all kinds of time.
No, I don't. But I just want to mention this 10 thing in the new in ArcGIS Pro 2.8, especially for those of you that already advanced in GIS in ArcGIS Pro. First of all, performance, product, and productivity. You can copy it to clipboard. So if you have something you like, you just screen capture it in Pro, it will go to the clipboard. You can copy Python to clipboard as well. So you run geoprocessing tool, you right click on geoprocessing tool, you can copy that as a command and post it somewhere else. We improve the loading for 3D, the table, and other things. Now there's another thing, data engineering. This is for you to help to explore, visualize, clean, and prepare your data. You can actually go to certain, all the field, you calculate the statistic of that field, create the graphic of that, of your data, the graph of your data. That's in data engineering, okay? The PDF now include the accessibility text. You can actually put the text in your layout, you save it as PDF, you can edit it in PDF. A command search. This is a new search. If you just want to search anything, tool, command, with the keyword, you got it. Okay, so you can have it. Support natively if you work with the BIM. Support natively for IFC, include as well as Revit file natively. Big data connection dialog. So any of you that have a big data and you want to actually make the connection and then do some search query, we have specific dialog for that. In the past, we have ArcGIS Bridge to R program. Now we release SAS, ArcGIS Bridge. There's 2 scripts that you can use, SAS to table and table to SAS in Pro 2.8. Okay. We also have browse dialog enhancement. What you see in the Window Explorer, you see it in ArcGIS Pro nicely. Okay. So I'm gonna give you the link in the What's New in 2.8. There is a nice video, 11-minute video. You got the idea. Okay. Don't forget, we are now the ArcGIS Pro is the workstation for data science that connect to open libraries, our ArcGIS API for Python and NumPy is connect to all this Conda, TensorFlow, Scikit, and everything. So you can do all the machine learning and deep learning. Okay, so this is just a few example of the GeoAI. We do a lot of object detection, smart rock digitizing, and then prediction as well. Okay. And last thing is, don't forget, we run like Jupyter Notebook now in ArcGIS Pro. So if you familiar a lot with that, so you can now just create a new notebook or open a notebook and you run it, you see the result directly on your map. You can export, import. So it's just a wonderful thing. If you're familiar with and like to work with Jupyter environment, this notebook is where you want to go. Okay, so this is just a quick demo on that. Joseph, I think we missed the resources.
Training resources. Yeah, if you want to skip back to that slide, we can just point people to it. We do have ways to dig deeper and to go further. Because we know you, the UMass and other community, you want to keep moving, you want to keep growing, which is great. So on that slide, we have the training classes, the videos, links, the learn.arcgis.com, which is, yeah, right here. That is a library of lessons. Okay. Yep. The blogs, including our own education community, which is really, of course, just focused on education. Esri Press books that you can get in digital form through Vital Source, which is our digital provider. The GeoNet is now called the Esri community that we write to, and also our colleagues in other programs write to, but the education one is the one we're responsible for. So hopefully that's a good set of resources as you continue to move forward with this. Also, that's not on here, but Rena and I are involved with planning and executing the higher education chats that happen every month. And these have been, over the last year, a really wonderful way for the community to not only learn more things, but to connect with each other. So it's the first Tuesday of every month. We're going to skip July because of the Esri user conference, but we're going to resume in August. So keep in touch about that as well. Also, last but not least, next week is the Esri Education Summit, Monday and Tuesday. We'd love to have you there. Free, it's virtual. You don't have to travel to San Diego for it. And we've got some technical workshops, some panels with your education community colleagues from all over the world presenting about their wonderful best practices and so on. And then we've got a couple of plenary sessions. So we'd love to see you there next week.
Awesome, thank you so much. I'm free to stick around for a little bit, and since we're recording this, people will be able to watch if there's anything beyond. Joseph and Canserina, if you have a few minutes to stick around, maybe we could open it up if there are any questions. This was an awesome presentation, and we're so grateful.
Well, thanks again, folks, for being the innovative, wonderful people that you are, especially in light of all the disruption that's happened in higher ed and society over the last year and a half. To have you folks moving forward with really embracing this is it's really impressive, and it's great to be a part of the community.
Yes, and also that Joseph and I are not only today, but feel free if you want to connect to us for questions, for more information, for getting more resources. At least we know each other now.
I'll make sure to include your contact information when I email folks with the recording.
Yes, yes, and also include that into the chat there. I put my email and Joseph there. Also the link to the, you know, we put the story map with a lot of resources on that you can actually explore.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much.
We do have one question.
Yes.
Where can we get the instructions for the zebra mussels exercise?
Yep, I was just typing furiously as you were chatting, but it is online. I can also send it, but it's part of that set of 10. Those activities on the spatial reserves zone are actually, if you really want to see an ArcMap alongside an ArcGIS Pro lesson, I on purpose have the same lesson in 2 different formats. In other words, so you can see that generally the pro lessons were shorter because of all the things we just chatted about with the workflows and the wizard interface for all the tools and so on. But I resisted the temptation to revise the lessons as I was going through and making pro versions of them, so you can actually see them side by side if you wanted to. But there are a set of pro lessons right there that takes you, the idea on those particular, the theme on those is problem solving, but also actually going to the data sources and getting the data and then going through and dealing with some of the messiness of the data and then bringing it into pro and making decisions with it. So that's one of the lessons, and there's the zebra mussels lesson. Cool. Yeah, thanks, folks.
So I feel that more and more ArcGIS Pro is the scientific workstations, you know, the type of the tools, the graph, the accessing for the latest technology on the, you know, the integration with the data science, image processing, deep learning, preparing the data and things like that. We more and more have the tools to do that in Pro, which is not available in ArcMap before. Yeah.
I have one question. Sorry.
Yes.
ArcMap, in ArcMap, when using a spatial analyst, we were always limited because of the file structure. I guess it's a very old inherited software from the days of DOS and ArcMap, ArcInfo. We couldn't have spaces in the path. We couldn't have large, long file names. Does ArcGIS Pro suffer from that when we are using the spatial analyst?
Yes, we do. The one that we can improve it from what the before, you know, we actually extend it more because this is more capability, is the more modern architecture as well, the 64-bit environments that able for us to do that. Okay.
Will you admit the spaces in the file, in the path of the data file?
In the path of the data
before I couldn't use with a special analyst,
like documents and settings, right?
My documents, I couldn't use that path in my document. I would have to use my _ document to use it as a path. I just wonder if Pro have improved on that.
I haven't tried. I always work with the local, you know, but when you start with ArcGIS Pro, you have all the paths going into your project. So I don't have to find a new path for that or create a new file. But maybe because of that, then I'm not aware if it actually changes.
I tend to be overcautious on this, Eugenio, and I didn't have any problems with my grids. I always had grid issues. When there was a grid, an Esri grid format, it only could be 9 characters, and you couldn't have it in with anywhere up in the directory tree, all the way up to your root folder, could not have any spaces in it. I know exactly the pain point that you're talking about. And in the last time I taught at the University of Denver back in winter, I didn't have any problem, but a couple of my students did. And because we were virtual, I couldn't actually go over their shoulder and look at the path name, but I suspect there might be some residual spaces. So to be on the safe side, you wouldn't have any, but of course you don't want to have to restructure your whole directory tree on your computer. So I haven't conducted a rigorous, looking over people's shoulders on their device. But I did get a couple of notes from my students using Pro that they still could not, with certain grid files, they couldn't do it. And once they shortened the name and put it in another folder, it worked.
Okay.
We can follow up. Yeah, go ahead, Becky. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll contribute that we're finding, I haven't played around myself, but students who are accessing ArcGIS through the virtual servers, the virtual machines we have set up, have to put their data into a OneDrive folder. We're now using OneDrive at UMass. And so the only way they can use their data is in OneDrive. And the way Microsoft names that folder is OneDrive _university space of space, Massachusetts. So it's like, I think some students, when they're doing work, maybe just with rasters, I'm not really sure if it's limited just to grid files or if it's broader. They've run into that problem with the spaces.
Ah, I see. So the pro doesn't like that
Yeah. Okay.
name.
It's
Okay.
only with rasters that don't have an extension, from what I experienced in the past. If you had a dot,
Thief.
TIFF or something, it was fine, but it was those ones that did not have an extension, then they were true grid files.
It is sensitive to 13 character. If it's more than 13 character, that will not
That
work.
too. It was the length and the space. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing that I can say as a positive little ray of sunshine here is that you're not using as many of those kinds of files anymore, because many of the the data servers out there, they have, it's sort of like the SDTS. Remember back in the, okay, maybe I'm dating myself. We used to use a lot of those kind of really clunky file names or file formats. And as we go forward, some of those grid formats are going into different formats. Again, that's not the best solution, but
the character number does not have a problem when you save them in the geodatabase. You can have a lengthy
that's a
name.
good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's only when they're floating out there in some other folder. Yep. Once you put it in the geodatabase, then kind of touches on what Canserina is sharing. Then the geodatabase sort of supersedes any clunky folder names.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That should be the way to do it.
Yep, just do a import into the geodatabase and you should be fine there. Which is probably best practice anyway. It's probably just something you should have. I don't always follow that either, but yep.
And you do not do anything with the personal geodatabase that used to be the case for. So what would happen if someone had that? If someone had the database back to ArcMap in the personal geodatabase, is it possible to convert it to geodatabase in ArcPro?
Yeah, ArcGIS Pro is using the file geodatabase. Okay, by default, when you import the project, it will create a new project in ArcGIS Pro and put your data into that file geodatabase.
Oh, good. So you don't have to mess around with converting the MDBs. Yeah. Okay, super.
I think I helped a professor with this once. There is a conversion tool in ArcMap to convert a personal geodatabase to a file geodatabase, and I don't think that exists in ArcGIS Pro.
That makes sense because correctly. It doesn't. Yeah. No, I think you're right, Becky, because it doesn't know how to even view an MDB. So that makes total sense. So if you truly wanted to convert it, you do it in ArcMap, or try what Rena's saying about just convert the MXD over, and then it should be okay. Be a good experiment.
Yeah.
If I can say one last thing. Something that I really enjoy of ArcGIS Pro is that as soon as you try to create something new, it sort of forces you to create the project. So you make the project and you make the default geodatabase. And then from then on, everything goes there. In ArcMap, you can bypass that so easily, or you needed to go and create your default geodatabase from the pull-down menu, file, default. So it was something that you wouldn't even pay attention to that until your data start getting lost, because you will start saving it using the default path, which is in some weird place in Windows folder. And then the student comes in a network machine, and then they don't find the data because it's in a different machine. So, but this one sort of forces you to create the database and the project and in whatever folder you want to use it, and that should save a lot of trouble with the students.
Especially if you have to package it and share it, everything goes together.
Yeah.
Can you share the default geodatabase with everyone? Because the address of the file or the folder in your computer may not be similar to the one that someone else who wants to use it in his or her computer. Is this still a problem? Because that was the case for ArcMap.
I think if maybe there's another way, but the most of people that share it, they actually share it as if you click the share button in ArcGIS Pro, you share your project, you share your map, or you share your layer, that data is come together with that. So you're not just sharing your default database. Right? But if you right click in your default database, you also have the capability if you want to export it into different format, if you like to. But mostly you work with the share button, and it's getting more and more as well. Now you can share as a project map, or if you need to actually access it in the mobile package, it will also share it as a mobile package, which is more concise for the mobile app. You can do that as well.
And that package is just wonderful, I think, in many ways, one of which is maybe some of you can relate. You got a package of a Pro, APRX. You package that up. You got a map document. You got a Arc Pro document map, and you package that up. You put it on your LMS or something like that, and the students access it, and it just opens. There's no where is this data layer exclamation point, where is this data layer, red exclamation point. Exactly. And I still like that to have them go to resources and access data in a variety of different portals, sure, but for certain activities you just want to have them grab this package with these 3 layers in it, and you just want it to work, especially at the beginning levels of a course, right, or the beginning weeks of a course, where you want to keep it pretty easy and digestible, and it's just wonderful.
Hey Joe, is there still any question for the administration of ArcGIS Pro? Or I know I chat with you privately, but is there anything else that we need to know and can help you?
No, this has been great. Yeah, we're running in. I was chatting with Canserina earlier. We do run into some issues with which Becky has touched on, with people running Arc Pro off of virtual machines, and also with how our campus IT administers ArcGIS Pro on our campus run virtual machines. And if that's something you're wanting to set up on your campus, please feel free to talk to us, because I can connect our IT people up depending on how you want to set that up. But if you want to set up Arc Pro with single sign-on for folks here that aren't at UMass Amherst, talk to me. If you haven't done it already, it really simplifies licensing. I can't emphasize that enough. And it's reduced my workload significantly here at UMass to go to named user single sign-on licensing.
So you don't have to manually add one by one the user, right, Joe?
Yeah, and then the way we do licensing here, every year you don't have to go through the whole thing where you're waiting to get license files from me, etc. It automatically renews, and you just don't have to worry about it anymore. It's really fantastic.
Super.
Yeah, and Joe, feel free if you want to connect with either me or technical support to figure it out about that issue with the virtual machine and the name user.
In the not too distant past, there was the license file on a hardware device. So again, I like to tell students, hey, when I was on work travel, if I forget to take that with me, I couldn't access ArcGIS, right? You had to have
the dongle,
the dongle with you, because that's where the license files were stored.
Yeah, and they used to be on parallel. They used to hook up to your parallel port between your printer and your computer.
The students now are like, "What's a parallel port?" Yeah, but that was a big thing that you had to make sure you took in a little plastic bag or something like that when you're on work travel next to your toothbrush or something. Oh gosh! Man. So things are getting improved for sure.
All right, folks, this feels like a good place to wrap up. So I want to thank you again, Canserina and Dr. Joseph, for this fascinating workshop. And I'll be sure to send out links to the recording and all of the different resources you shared and your contact information. So if people have more questions, they can follow up.
Yes, and Becky, if there is any other interest for other workshop, let us know. Now I'm running the spatial data science and also the deep learning as well, which is using a lot of pro and ready to use model. If there is any interest, so we can talk about that as well.
Sounds great. Thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Becky. Thanks, Joseph.
Map on.